So they will pick more work. So maybe they end up doing 600 story points, or maybe they do not complete the 500 story points and they only could do 400, so that nobody will have any argument with them. They will simply submit those 400 story points, present them to the customer. At the end of the iteration, they will review it, and if they are acceptable, they will give the user acceptance. Any stories which are not acceptable to the customer will be sent back to the product backlog as to be addressed later in subsequent iterations, right? So that way, sometimes they can do less, sometimes they can do more, but as they enter into second iteration and third iteration and then fourth iteration, so they will have a more firm figure how much can they do. So their team velocity would be established after a couple of iterations. So what if that by the end of the fourth iteration, they are unable to achieve output of the release, meaning release cannot be completely delivered to the customer? What should we do? Now, as the team is proceeding ahead with iteration to iteration, at the end of every iteration, the product owner and the customer, they get into a negotiation, they review how much has been done, and is it really possible that we can complete the all the items of the release one by the end of fourth iteration. So they are thinking about it at the end of first iteration, and maybe they find that this is not possible, and therefore what they should do is they should revise the release size. They can, maybe they at this point they find that okay, 4 are not enough, we may have to have 5 iterations in the first release, so they can extend the all the dates of the releases by one iteration. That means the first release may have 5 iterations at that point. So that was decided after the end of first iteration. So after every iteration, they will review the situation and they are at liberty to revise that. Right? Okay. Why I'm telling you all of this story? For example, they end up completing it in 5 iterations. The project size has increased, and this is mutually agreed between the product owner and the customer. So there is no change request required. Contract amendments will be done automatically. So there is absolutely no problem if the job was done in 4 iterations or 5 iterations, or maybe in 3 iterations. In Agile, we are quite flexible. We may do work faster than what was expected, right? So it doesn't mind if we complete the release in 3 iterations, 4 iterations, or 5 iterations. This is to be mutually decided between the product owner and the customer. Now the thing is, whatever we have produced during this first release, during these iterations 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they are yet not handed over to the customer, though customer has given acceptance of those items. So in a way, those items have entered into a blackout time, and only at the release point, those things will be assembled and shipped to the customer premises, and that is when they will receive it. Got it? Now, who and how are we going to consolidate the result of all the iterations into a shippable load? We need some extra time to do that. So at the end of release, we add a little iteration at the end, which is kind of maybe couple of hours or a day or two, which is called hardening. sprint. Or you call it iteration H. This is where we ensure that all the items being handed over to the customer are complying with the all the company requirements or the government regulations. That could be quality, safety, environment, and things like that. So once this compliance is achieved, only then we can hand over those things to the customer. So that is all happening in iteration H. Okay. But you would say that user acceptance for those user stories has already been acquired. That was the user story acceptance. Mean each user story was presented to the customer, they accepted it, and in principle, customer is happy. But customer has yet to be released that all those things. So once the delivery, once the compliance is complete and delivery is ready to be made, or delivery is made, that is called that these user stories have met the definition of done. Definition of done, right? So TOD has been achieved. After iteration H, TOD has been achieved, meaning all the items have been handed over to the customer and therefore definition of done has been achieved, right? Similarly, naturally, when you have to start a release, the first iteration of the release, you have to somehow initially plan how this release will go on. So therefore, there is yet another uh, small iteration in the beginning before the first iteration that we call iteration 0. Iteration 0 may be again, it is not of the actual size of the iteration, just like hardening iteration. This one is also maybe a couple of hours or a day or two. That in that time, team sits down with the product owner to plan how these iterations will deliver, right? So this is called iteration 0, and the last iteration is called iteration H. So principally, that means the definition of done is required to be met at the release points here, 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 and here. You understand that? One thing is user acceptance. User acceptance is related with every user story, and there may be hundreds of user stories. So if we completed 20 user stories in first iteration, their user acceptance has been achieved. We did another 30 in the second iteration, their user acceptance has been achieved. But so far, none of these have met the definition of done. That will be done in the hardening sprint. In principle, that is all the things are. But at the same time, in Agile, it is not necessary that the deliverables are to be delivered only at the release point. Customer can demand the deliverable at any point during the release as well. For example, customer wants delivery at this point. So in that case, after completing the second iteration, we can have a small hardening iteration just to consolidate the outputs of iteration 1 and 2, and those can be delivered. This could be RDOD, can be delivered to the customer. And, we don't want to restrict it. We are not working on a predictive environment. In principle, we agree that generally release would be, the DOD will be done at the end of a release. But if customer demands it earlier, we can deliver it at the end of an iteration or anywhere in between the release. But at the end of the release, there definitely will be our definition of done met. So do you get the idea? The big picture in which in every release we have a number of iterations, and the very first iteration is 0, in which we do the overall planning of the release, and very last iteration is a hardening sprint or iteration H, where we meet the conditions of definition of done before handing it over to the customer. At the end of each iteration, we will have received user acceptance for specific user stories. Okay, if that is clear, can you please summarize this in your own words?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, sorry, I changed my mic because it's raining hard here in our place. Okay, so I think what you're saying is that we have iteration 0, iteration 8. So in my own words, iteration 0 is like the pre-work before we even start with the list of user stories defined, and we need to make sure that we have a definition of done in mind, right? So
Right.
as we do the iteration 0, then iteration 8, H, or the hardening sprint. So
Yes.
it's like we conduct it before the final release. If I compare it to predictive, it's like my cutover preparations.
Right.
So what needs to be done for before we do the release
Yes.
uh, for those set of iterations that were completed.
Exactly. Right. So, Mark, you get it also?
We
Mark,
can't
can you
hear
hear me?
you, Arman. We cannot hear you.
His mic is not working. Okay, no problem. So, if you have understood this, I'll move ahead with it. Okay, so this slide is completely covered. We have talked about the blackout times. We have talked about the go live. We have talked about iteration 0, iteration H, and now we are going to look at how the scheduling occurs in an adaptive environment in an agile project, right? So here we are. It all depends on the team composition and life cycle, right? Project team works with the product owner to decide, you know, whenever the team goes back after completing an iteration, they go back to the product owner, and it is kind of a planning thing again goes on. After every iteration, the process of picking the work from the product backlog is actually a kind of a meeting with the product owner. And here it is decided amongst the team members and the product owner what tasks or user stories they are taking out of there and taking it to the iteration. Actually, these items which will be picked by the team will be removed from the product backlog. The team will carry those items, those user stories to their sprint, and they have got a smaller backlog there, which is called a sprint backlog. By the way, in the iteration 0, there could be a concept of a release backlog also. Whatever is to be delivered at the end of first release, that could have been decided, that could have been placed in a release backlog, and that release backlog will include all the work which needs to be completed for the first release. Anyways, so project team and product owner, they decide after every iteration what items are to be taken to the next iteration. Like the roadmap I had just shown you, they develop this kind of a roadmap to show release functionality and timeframes. And after each iteration, they can sit with the customer, and if there is a need to revise it, they can mutually decide and revise it. There is absolutely no problem at all. no change request required, no problem. Okay, as far as the approach of scheduling is concerned, we have two approaches in Agile. One is purely Agile and one is purely Lean. The first one is time box scheduling with a backlog. That is the conventional thing that, for every iteration, we have a iteration backlog, and then we have fixed time boxes of 2 weeks, and we perform our work for those 2 weeks and complete the work of the backlog, get the user acceptance, then go back to the product backlog and pick up more work with the product owner, and then start this next iteration. This is time box scheduling with a backlog. Now, the other method is slightly different, which might look weird to you, but in this, we do not have time boxes. We do not have iterations. In a lean method, this is a lean method, it is called on-demand continuous scheduling. Now, what we have done is that they will, a team will start working, they will keep picking a couple of items from the product backlog and keep doing them as soon as any item gets completed without waiting for the iteration. There is no iteration. They will pick another work from the backlog. So that way, they continuously keep scheduling and keep doing until the end of the project. So there is no break. There is no iteration as such. They are continuously working, and this is on demand. Naturally, product backlog has prioritized items. So naturally, next highest priority item will automatically move into it. If there are no iterations, how are we controlling it? Basically, the philosophy of lean is that there should be no wastage whatsoever. Even no time wastage also. Right? So if you study lean, you will learn that there are 8 different kinds of wastes, and time is one of them. So this lean methodology is basically not for the flexibility purposes, not for the speed purposes, but it is for the purposes of the of proficiency and optimization. Now, what happens is they don't want that if there are 200 items in the backlog, the team should pick all the 200 items at once and start doing them. It is impossible. Because if the team is of limited size, say 10 people, so 10 people can't do that many tasks simultaneously. So according to the rules of lean, they say only pick up that much work which you can do. Right? Just like in iterations, we picked up certain work and brought it into the sprint backlog and started doing it, done it, handed it over, moved on to the next iteration. But here, because there is no iteration, so we will limit the work in progress. Meaning, it will be defined by the product owner how much work the team is allowed to handle at any one time. For example, they say you will not handle more than 5 items at a time. So they will pick 5 items, put it in their to-do list, and start doing at most 5 tasks at a time. Now, all the tasks do not end at the same time. As soon as any task gets completed, they are allowed to pick a new item from the product backlog. So at any point in time, they won't be doing more than 5 tasks at a time. And slowly and steadily, all the work will get done in a continuous scheduling framework. This is a lean framework. Do you understand the difference between the two methods, the time box and on demand?
Yes.
Okay, good enough. Now let me introduce a new concept to you. The modern agile methodology marries up the lean and agile method together. How? Predominantly, they keep the concept of iterations. So there are iterations, but within an iteration, they apply the lean principle of work in progress within the iteration, not for the whole project. So if there are 20 items in the backlog, they say, okay, your work in progress is limited to 3 or 5. If it is limited to 5, then the team can pick up to 5 items and start doing them. As soon as any item is done, they will pick the 6th item and so on and so forth. But this is all happening within an iteration, right? So this could be a hybrid method between the time box and the on-demand scheduling. Anyways, these are two types of scheduling allowed in Agile. Project team selects activities for delivery within an iteration or sprint. Team produce increment of value for delivery and feedback. Now, what is increments of value? You see, we will talk about the concept of minimum viable product and minimum business increment, right? I hope I have not discussed that earlier. Did I or did I not?
You did.
I did. Did you see the video?
You talked about it.
Yeah, minimum. Yeah.
Okay, but there is going to be a video. I'll show you a video if I have not shown it earlier, and that video will explain the minimum viable product and minimum business increment. So I'll pen it for that time, and we'll talk about that later. But generally speaking, minimum viable product is a prototype. I don't know. Maybe we have seen that video where we said investment for. Do you remember that?
I
Yeah,
think
Investment.
there's
for
a video. Yeah.
discovery. Yeah, we
Yes,
saw
you
the
have seen
video.
that.
So
Okay,
yeah,
fine. So you know what is MBI and what is MVP. So that is how the things happen in agile scheduling. Okay, let's look at the difference between the two, on demand and the time box. On demand is the one which is lean, which we also call Kanban. Kanban is a lean method. But nowadays, I said it has been married up, and now uh, the method I've told you that we exercise this concept of on demand within every iteration, right? So we generally call that new method as a Kanban, and we use a Kanban board for that purpose. Anyways, on demand allows individual requests to be addressed, levels out work of team members, best when activities are divided equally. Now, activities are divided equally means that activities, if you are to do them in a lean manner, they must have almost the equal size. In pure agile, we may not have iterations of equal size. One iteration may be a little longer than the other, but here we need all the iterations to be user stories to be of equal size. Not iteration, user stories to be of equal size. But in agile, they may or may not be. But at least the only restriction is that no iteration should be bigger in size than, no user story should be bigger than the iteration size, right? Because we want those things to be done within that iteration. So prioritize request, this is on demand, prioritize request to determine start sequence, then sequence stories individually through completion. One by one, they keep picking a story from the product backlog, and they keep sequencing them and they keep doing them. Whereas in Agile, define requirements with the user stories, then prioritize user stories, and then we commit to certain number of user stories for each iteration. On demand is a pull-based system. When we have done those five, any one of those 5 items, one is done and we are left with 4, then we can pull a new user story into our loop, and we can keep our work in progress to a maximum of 5. That's it. So this method provides incremental business value. So we will continuously keep delivering to the customer, and customer is happy. Whereas time box, we deliver only on the release points or when customer desire. It could be end of an iteration, end of release, or end of the project. We could do the DoD anytime. This also delivers business value early and incrementally. So the only difference is in Agile, we are delivering early and incrementally, whereas that is continuously providing business value incrementally. It's almost the same thing. This is exactly what I created for you. This is the story after the timeline. Timeline may compose of these 3 releases. Each release will have a couple of iterations. The last iteration is the hardening iteration, and the first iteration is the iteration 0. And in between, we have iteration 1, 2, and 3. Now, what is done in our iteration? Naturally, we are not talking about iteration 0, because iteration 0 was a planning iteration. So iteration 1 is our first iteration. In the iteration, we will have features. What are the features? Actually, customer gave us requirements. We broke down those requirements into functionalities. Those functionalities were further broken down into number of features. Now, if the feature is not big enough, then our user story can address our feature. But you can see user story 1 and 2, they are representing the same feature. Means this feature has been subdivided into 2 user stories. Whereas feature B is completely addressed by user story 3. Feature C is completely addressed by user story 4. So generally, our user story represents our feature or part of a feature. So this is how the thing is done. Requirements, functionalities, features, and user stories. Once we are addressing our user story, I mean, when I'm planning my iteration, I have got these user stories 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the things I have to do during this iteration. So I will, just like work breakdown structure, I will break the user stories further down to tasks. That is only one breakdown level. Each user story is broken down into a couple of tasks, and naturally the user story had certain story point allocated to that. So those story points will be distributed into tasks. Say there were 20 story points. This user story 1 was 20 story points. So maybe these tasks are 5 story points each, or maybe different. But the total is going to be 20. Right? So what I have done is I have broken down each of my user stories into certain tasks and allocated them the story points, and then we start planning which task to do, what is the sequence, and things like that. But remember, this planning is very different from the predictive planning, because we have got only a couple of tasks. Say there are 5 things. I think there would be around 20 tasks to accomplish. Not a big deal. So planning 20 tasks to be done in 2 weeks is not really very difficult. It makes rather things much more simpler. As I said, it is not possible to determine the velocity of the team in the very first iteration. Actually, velocity is speed over time, right? So what is the speed of working? We will determine that in first iteration, second iteration, third iteration, and then we will average it out and say, okay, this is the velocity of the team, right? So we say the velocity of team is, say, 400 story points per iteration. Got it? Okay, I have already talked about features and tasks, features, user stories, and tasks. Scheduling aligned to features ensure associated work is coordinated, because feature is what is of interest to the customer. We have to deliver these features to the customer, and each of our user story addresses our feature or maybe part of our feature. But no user story can handle more than one feature at a time. We have to make sure that each user story is not handling more than one feature at a time. Associating features with product roadmap offers visibility of when blocks of functionality can be released to the business and end user. Actually, we will translate these features towards the accomplishment of the release. That what is to be delivered at the end of the release, these are those features which are included in these user stories, right? So slowly and steadily, we will achieve that target. But I have already told you that it may take less time, it may take more time, but that is not a problem with us because we can renegotiate the terms. How much work or how long a release should be, how many iterations there should be in one release. But remember one thing, the size of the release, size of the iteration cannot be changed. Size of the release can be changed, but size of an iteration, which is decided in the beginning, will remain the same. Okay. Another interesting thing, this is called story mapping. We map the stories, the user stories for this iteration in such a manner that we create kind of swim lanes. Two people of my team will be working on these activities in this sequence. These three people will be working on this swim lane. This one person will be working on this swim lane. And you see, when this job is done, this and this job is done, the work is handed over to the second team in the second swim lane. They will do it in a specific sequence and hand it over to the third team who will handle the remaining work. So why this sequence is there, unlike a critical path thing or what do you call it, the network diagram, it is nothing like a network diagram, like, dependencies and all. But this is loose connection of activities which may be dependent on each other. It is not a closed circuit like a network diagram. You see, other activities are not at all in any sequence. But these activities specifically are in a sequence, and this sequence is like, maybe customer required a specific story to be at the top priority, but it is mandatory for that activity to start before another job, another activity or task could have been done. So that way, that task will come earlier than this task. So this is the concept of swim lanes. These are the swim lanes, and these are the sequence of flow of your iteration. This is how things are happening. So we create this kind of diagram. This is called story mapping. We have mapped all our user stories in a kind of a sequence. Not exactly a network diagram, but a kind of a sequence. Okay, how do we measure in agile? We don't measure according to time or cost. How do we measure? Did we discuss that? We measure the effort, not the time. Right? Now, you would say effort is resources. So, do we measure how many people are going to do that? No. We know our team has a fixed size, 10 people say. We know that our iteration has a fixed duration, 2 weeks. And this team of 10 people working for 2 weeks can handle a specific amount of work which could cost approximately equal, a little plus or minus. But unlike a predictive project, we are not concerned about time, cost, and resources. Rather, we work on a level of approximation, and you will be amazed to find that this approximation is so very accurate statistically. Let us see. We are looking at which user story is more complex than the others. We are not saying how much time it will take, how much resources it will take, how much cost it will take. We don't mind that. But we have combined all these factors into an approximation we are calling effort. So one story may need more effort. When I say more effort, maybe they need more time, maybe they need more money, maybe they need more resources, but there is a complexity in it. So a user story which has a relatively bigger size, right? Naturally, it might be consuming these resources or time or cost more. But anyways, we are not bothered about that. We just want to have a comparison amongst the selected user stories, and we try to establish which user story has what effort required. And rather than going into detailed calculation, we can estimate the effort by relative sizing. We call it, one method is t-shirt sizes. Like you go to the mall to buy a t-shirt for yourself. So there are so many different sizes there. You select the appropriate size, which is closest to your size. You don't go there and say, okay, measure, take a measurement and then give me the appropriate shirt. No, not at all. We approximately know the size which fits me, and I just go and buy that. Similarly, we are not going to take the whole measurement of every user story, but we will say, okay, a team sits down and decides how complex the story is, how much effort is required. If very less effort is required, we call it extra small. If very large effort is required, we call it extra large. So we have got 5 sizes here. So in a way, I'm grading them from 1 to 5. That's about all. No exact calculation. I am just grading them from 1 to 5. Right? So that will give me how difficult or how much effort is required in this user story. This is an approximation. Another method for doing that is story points, as I discussed with you earlier. How do we determine the story points? Again, the story point is again the same thing. It is like a relative measure, right? How big, how many story points could be there? Or for that matter, we use not a straight scale of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We rather resort to another method, which is called Fibonacci sequence. Have you heard about it? What is a Fibonacci?
Yes.
Good.
So the number series of numbers wherein the number is the sum of
Of
the
the
two
previous two.
preceding numbers. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. And why is it so famous? Because this is called as God's ratio. This is by nature. This is natural, and it is found in every natural thing. Like in galaxies, you find this spiral. In plants, sunflower and all, you find this spiral. In atomic structures, you find this spiral. The orbits of the various satellites, you find this spiral, right? This spiral is everywhere. And this Fibonacci number is actually creating the spiral. So, yes, uh, so rather than using state numbers, we will use the Fibonacci numbers, which are going to be 1, 2, and then tell me the next number.
3.
Okay. Next number.
5.
5.
Next number.
8.
8.
Next number.
13.
13.
Exactly. This is the sequence. This is the Fibonacci sequence. So we call them, we tell them, tell the team to decide how big this story should be. Right? So team decides which number, correlates with the complexity of the story. Okay. Using the same philosophy of Fibonacci numbers, we have another method of estimation, and that is called planning poker. Have you ever played poker game, card game?
Yes.
Me
Good.
no.
But anyways, I just wanted to make a mention that this is a card game. So what we do is, we create a deck of 40 cards, 40, 40. And on each card, there is a different Fibonacci number written. So one card will have a 1 on it, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and you go on until the 40th card. This is the composition of the whole deck, right? My deck has got 40 cards, and every card has got a Fibonacci number starting from 1 to whatever. We have 10 team members. We bring along 10 planning poker card sets, decks of cards, and we give one deck to every team member. Right? Then team lead asks, okay, what do you think? This first user story is, how do you grade it in size? You have got your planning poker cards. Whichever card corresponds to the size of this user story, please raise that hand in your hand. So there are 10 members. Everyone raises whatever he thinks is most closest to the size of the story. Right? But what is the result of this exercise? There are 10 people, they raise 10 cards. But according to the rule of statistics, majority of the people will have almost similar opinion. You understand my point?
Yeah.
So most of the people, maybe they have graded it 5, but there are going to be outliers like the pessimist and the optimist, right? So we'll not stop there. We'll ask those extreme positions to explain why they think the value you thought is appropriate for this user story. So the pessimist and optimist, one after the other, they give their justification in front of the whole team. Once they have done that, I, as a team lead, will ask them to replace their planning poker card, put it back into the deck, and then again I will get the voting. And this time, you will be amazed to learn that their 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 positions have changed. The middle value does not change much, but the extreme values tend to come down. So we can keep repeating this exercise until we have gained a consensus about the size of our user story. When all the members agree that this size is 5 or 7 or whatever, 5 or 8, they all have to agree on one value. When they agree, we put it down in writing as an estimate for that story. I hope that exercise is understandable.
Yes.
So we do measurement this way. This slide explains the definition of ready and definition of done. I suppose I have already told you what the definition of done is. Definition of ready is new for you. Definition of ready is when the team is ready to initiate their work in the iteration. I mean, there must be some prerequisites, some equipment, some materials, some resources to be made available. When everything has been made available, it has been all been checked out that, okay, now you are all set to go. That is called definition of ready. And definition of done is when we have physically to hand over anything to the customer. User acceptance we already got. We need to get, and user story, user acceptance is received based on user stories. Now, all the user stories which has been accepted so far, when the customer wants the delivery of these or the shipment of these items, that is a point where we do definition of done to ensure all the compliances are also complete and there is nothing outstanding. And then we hand over that item to the customer. That means definition of done. Now, the concept of definition of done is only there in Agile. In predictive, we do not have so many user acceptances for each user story. There are no user stories in predictive. Therefore, they just have one single user acceptance criteria for the whole product. And because product is to be handed over only once at the end of the project or maybe at the end of a phase, so at that point in time, they will not only do the user acceptance, but they will ensure the compliances. So the word user acceptance in predictive stands for all the compliances and the acceptances. Therefore, there is no separate concept of DoD in a predictive project. When you get the user acceptance for the whole product, that is assumed to have met the compliance requirement, and DoD is considered complete automatically. Only in Agile, we have the concept of DOR and DoD. So far, so good?
Yes.
Okay, I think we deserve a little break here. So let us have a break for 10 minutes. Is it all right?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So here we go. Okay.
I think Arman is not yet back. Maybe you can. Oh, there he is.
Okay, good. Right. So we start with the next slide, and that is reprioritize sprint oblique iteration backlog. How do we prioritize the iteration? How is the iteration done within the prioritization done within an iteration? First of all, you do understand that there is a product backlog which has got all the user stories in it in a prioritized order. When an iteration starts, they do a sprint planning. They pick out certain items from the product backlog with the consent of the product owner. They are the highest priority items, and as many tasks they think the team can do, they bring it to their sprint backlog. And then they start their sprint planning where they break down each user story into tasks and allocate story points to each one of the tasks and then sequence and do the planning. But you see, as I said, the planning of a sprint is not that uphill task. You are planning just for 2 weeks, not a big deal. But if it was a 1 year long project, you might have to spend a lot of time planning. Maybe one complete month you will spend planning. But here, it is going to be instantaneous. Just 2 hours or at most 4 hours is enough for your whole sprint planning. And then you can get on to the job. And ultimately, you will be done by the end of the iteration, no matter if you have completed all the user stories or not. Whatever you have delivered will be sent to the customer for user acceptance. And then we'll move back. We'll do the feedback naturally from the customer. We'll do the retrospective. And then the team will go back to the product backlog where they will find that there might be new requirements into the backlog in addition to what they left with. They can reprioritize that, helping product owner in reprioritization of that backlog, which we call grooming or refinement of the backlog. Once that is done, they pick up another couple of stories for the next iteration, and this cycle goes on and on. Right? Okay. Now let's talk a bit about the hybrid scheduling, which is not really much important because the top tier, maybe the project and phases at that level, they do just like the predictive project, they plan things there. But under that level, they start with the agile planning. So the bottom process is all about retrospectives and user stories and iterations that remain the same, but upper part is like a predictive project. They do overall planning, but that is not very deep. They don't plan down to the activity level. They just plan down to the phase level, and after the phase, then the things start with the agile method. So this is a hybrid scheduling. Okay, questions we have. The project manager informs the project sponsor that the project management plan will continuously increase in the level of detail as the project moves forward. The project manager, in project management, what is this process known as?
Letter B,
B.
P, progressive
progressive
elaboration. Very
Boy.
elaboration.
nice.
Yes.
Our business is unclear on the direction and when features are to be expected for an agile managed project. What project artifact helps communicate the goals, milestones, and potential deliverables, releases, or other work outputs?
Letter A.
Which one?
Letter A.
A, product roadmap. Okay, good enough. Which is the best elicitation technique to use when your project team wants to facilitate a discussion with a certain set of users to get a better understanding on how they might use your project's product?
Focus group.
Focus, yeah, letter B.
Uh, Focus group is the right answer. A project team is reviewing the requirements documentation that they are responsible for working on. Which project artifact can they reference to see the connection between the requirements and the business and project objectives?
What the fuck?
Mark, what do you think? Letter.
Wait, I'm thinking about A or D.
Yeah.
Okay.
Requirements traceability.
I think I think
Why
requirements traceability.
why D? Scope management plan just gives you the general policy.
Yeah, so
That
A.
doesn't give the relationship. So A
Okay.
is the correct answer.
Yep.
In which of the following situations would brainstorming be an appropriate technique?
Letter C.
Hmm? C.
C.
Very nice. Very nice. Which of the following is an agile method to prioritize project objectives, features, user stories, and tasks?
Moscow
Moscow. D.
analysis.
Moscow. Prioritization is Moscow. Good. Your company is designing a game for families. They test whether the game is easy enough for children by creating a prototype and then establishing their test criteria. They create test books of 100 boys and 100 girls between the ages of 3 and 5 at 50 schools across 30 regions. Then they modify and implement the prototype across the country. What process are they engaged in?
Statistical sampling.
C. Letter C.
Very nice. What is the purpose of decomposing the project work within the hierarchical WBS structure?
A.
A. Okay, good. A business is anxious to get a portion of the project creations out into the marketplace to get end user feedback and impressions before the entire product is finished. What must the project team establish for their release to end users?
A. MVP.
A. Very nice. Which of the following is correct definition of the critical path?
D.
Letter D. Dog.
The
Right,
last one.
right.
Delta.
Very nice. Now, what is this relationship? If we must complete the software code before we can create the user manual, what type of dependency exists between these two work packages?
Finish to start.
Finish to start.
Finish to start. Very good. Which of the following is not a technique for estimation?
Per product box.
Right. Which of the following is the best approach for estimating effort?
Letter C.
C. Very good.
C.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, we are done with scheduling and we will start the resources. Maybe we can take another break here. And after that, 10 minutes, we will then start these resources. Will that be okay with you?
Yep.
Right. Welcome back.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Next topic is about resources. As I told you, there are three things which are to be estimated. I mean, um, uh, duration, resource, and cost. So, from that point of view, resource is also very important. But resources is very tricky because resources are not only the human resources, they are the materials, raw materials, equipment, machinery, everything. And even the human resource, apart from our own team, the subcontractors could also be somehow sometimes treated as our resource. So resources could be people and equipment, value and empower internal human resources, yet leverage external resources to ensure you have the best team and equipment possible. Naturally, your organization may not hold all the resources in house. And therefore, if you are short of people, you may have to hire new people or subcontract some work to the contractor. As far as non-living items are concerned, like the equipment and all, you again may not hold everything in your organization. You may have to rent some equipment or sometimes buy some equipment, and uh, the smaller materials, tools and uh, devices you may have in your store. There must be inventory control. Anyways, when I talk about resources, I am talking about all the people and all types of equipment, tools, raw materials, everything. Before we start, like any other management plan, we need to develop a resource management plan. And again, I will emphasize the management plan is about the policy. How are we going to go about resource management? All the guideline, how to select the resources and all must be provided here. So these are some of the topics we must have in our resource management plan. First of all, identification of all kinds of resources, people and equipment. Then a procedure should be given. How are we going to acquire these resources? Then we must earmark the roles and responsibilities, like who is the person's function in a project, what is the role of that person, what is the authority he or she will be exercising, what are his assigned duties, and any competencies and skills required. So this is just like a job specification, right? So you must create these kinds of job specifications. You must also develop a project organization chart. I'm not talking about the organization chart for the whole organization. I am specifically pointing towards your project. Who is answerable to whom, right? How are they linked together, the whole project team? Then project team resource management, like any guidance on how to define, select, manage, and release resources. These instructions should also be there in the resource management plan. If there is any training requirement, your strategies for and requirements for the training are to be defined. So guideline for that is there. Team development methods. Naturally, this is something we need to do. We have to develop our team specifically for the purpose of our project. They may be very competent, but you see, they may not have experience in the type of work we are doing. So the team may have to be developed for that. And then is the resource control. Resource control is a method for ensuring non-human resources only. Because you don't control humans, you control things. So non-living items can be controlled can be put into a store, can be inventory, and things like that. But as far as the human resources are concerned, they are not to be controlled. They are to be managed. Assign resources and allocate responsibilities. Like, assign your team members to the project, decide their roles and responsibilities, create a team directory, organization chart, and the schedule exactly according to the resource management plan. We have defined that already. So instructions are there, guideline is there. Now, using that guideline, you will physically assign resources and allocate them the responsibilities. Tailor responsibilities according to team needs and project approach. Actually, whichever approach you have selected, agile, predictive, or hybrid, naturally the roles are going to be accordingly. Consider technical and soft skills. That means experience, knowledge, or skill level from a specific resource. The most important thing is their attitude. They should have a good attitude. They should be willing to work, right? And especially the important thing is they should not have their own direction. They should be aligned with the organizational strategy. They must have a shared vision. And then, if your project is large enough, maybe it is occurring globally or regionally, then there are additional factors to be taken care of. Local projects could have different factors. Global and regional projects could have different factors. So whatever is applicable, you consider that. What is a resource calendar? What do you think about it?
Like vacation leaves of the
Yeah.
resources. So basically, when is that resource available?
Yeah.
Correct.
Actually, this tells us which resources, whether human or otherwise, which resources are available at what times during the life of the project, right? So whenever you have to allocate a resource, go have a look at the resource calendar and see whether that resource is available on those dates or not. Because you cannot allocate a resource until and unless the resource is available, right? So document resource availability, people, equipment, material, etc. during a planned activity period. Use when estimating project activities and understanding their dependencies, because resource is one of the biggest dependencies. You may have planned the things back to back, but are you making sure that those resources do get available on that specific date? That is more important. So consider that from the beginning. Don't just keep planning things, but also start making the resources available. It specifies when and for how long identified team and physical resources will be available during the project. And then, naturally, we will progressively elaborate and keep updating this plan throughout the project. Because as we move ahead in the life of project, situations change, and maybe we have to amend our resource calendar, or for that matter, our resource management plan. So accordingly, you should keep it updated throughout the life of a project. Okay, are you aware about the concept of RAM and RASI charts? What is the difference between responsibility assignment matrix and RASI chart? Actually, they are not the same, but they are used for similar purposes. Let me show you. For example, I am drawing a responsibility assignment matrix, RAM. Now, I have got certain resources available. So say this is resource A, B, C, D, and E. And I have got various tasks listed here. Task 1, task 2, task 3, task 4, and task 5. Right? Now, just assigning a task to a number of people is called responsibility assignment matrix. For example, I say task 1 will be handled by A, B, and C. Task 2 will be handled by B, C, D, and E. Task 3 will be handled by A, C, and E. Task 4 will be handled by A, B, D, and E. And task 5 will require all of these people. So what I have done is I have created a responsibility assignment matrix. Responsibility assignment matrix does not define the role. It just says that these people are our team and they will be doing task 1. These people are our team, they will be doing task 2. This is just responsibility assignment to our team. As far as Rasi is concerned, we have got R start for responsible. A stands for accountable. C stands for consult. And I stands for inform. So what we are saying is that, for example, task 1, we have resource A, B, and C assigned to it. What are their specific roles on this? For example, I will put these figures R, A, C, and I. For example, A is accountable, B is responsible, and C must be consulted with. Maybe for task 2, A is accountable, C is responsible, and D is to be consulted, and I has to be kept informed. Here, we may have this person may be accountable and responsible, and these two people might be consulted. This person may be accountable, this person may be responsible, and this person may be informed why this person must be consulted. This person is accountable, this is responsible, this must be informed, this must be informed, and this must be consulted. Now you see, it has now become a Rasi chart. Actually, RAM and Rasi are different. In Rasi, we have the roles defined also, whereas in a RAM chart, there are only responsibility assigned. Does it make any sense?
Yes.
Okay, good enough. So responsible, actually, there is a confusion sometimes. We think that the person accountable is the person responsible. Well, that might be true, but generally, a person is either more accountable or more responsible. Accountable is usually the boss of the team. You know, whatever the 3 people or 4 people, who is in charge of that job is usually considered accountable. And the person who is nominated for day-to-day working of that job, that person is called responsible. Rest everything, everyone is either to be consulted or to be informed. Consulted are those people like subject matter experts whom we should seek opinion from, and they provide us advice. Now, it is not necessary that the advice you have got from a consultant is mandatory on you. Actually, you are the boss, you are accountable, so you may choose, pick and choose which consultation is to be applied and which consultation has to be dropped. But anyways, this communication between the the stakeholder who is being consulted and the project manager is going to be optional. Then there are people in our stakeholders who must be kept informed. This is a one-way traffic. We don't listen to them, we just keep them informed. Why? Because maybe they are too many in number and it is impossible to get their feedback on everything. So these are the people who must be kept informed what is happening, right? Maybe you are sending out a progress report or some kind of a summary to them on a weekly or monthly basis. That way, you can keep them informed. But they are not supposed to, they are not meant to actually participate or give any suggestions or things like that. Okay. Okay, this is a little question. Which of these are true in adaptive resource planning? Teams self-organize to distribute work. Adaptive teams never have a leader. Team members are a mix of generalists and specialists. Team members should be T-shaped.
1, 3, 4.
1, 3, and 4. Very good. 2 is not right because, yes, some people may think that adaptive teams do not have a leader, but they do. It is a servant leader. Filling resource needs. Well, that is a very interesting question. You know, if you have got, let's talk about the human resource first. If you have got workforce available and you put them on the project, that is, you are making them available because they were available in-house. If they were not available in-house, what is the option do you have? Yes, please.
You supplier, find a supplier who can provide.
You do what?
A supplier or a vendor that can provide the same. So you can provide in-house.
You can hire a new member,
Yes.
right? But if the hiring is also not possible, then maybe you outsource that job to a subcontractor, and that way it becomes a subject of procurement, and they will be responsible for that portion of work, right? Anyways, external sourcing is a consideration not only in the human resources but also in other resources. For example, you have to order some equipment. Naturally, you probably can't make it all by yourself. You have to order it from the market. You have to order some raw materials. So, such like things, you have to get into a contract with someone. Again, it is a subject of procurement. So, basically, you carry out a make or buy analysis where you check whether we can do it all by ourselves or we need to uh, outsource this job to another party. So once that analysis is done and you have decided that making it yourself is not possible, you have to buy the resource or buy the uh, services. Once that analysis is done, then you reach or make or buy decision, and that would be ultimately culminating into your procurement strategy because you will be outsourcing it. It is not really a resource management subject anymore. It becomes a procurement subject. But anyways, we are discussing procurement here alongside the resources. As far as procurement is concerned, again, as we had for quality, we had a quality policy. For everything, we had some governance guideline. So for the purposes of procurement, we should also have the procurement strategy of the organization, procurement policy of the organization, which we must follow in our procurement procedures. So work with organizations, finance, or procurement department. So from where these guidelines are going to come, normally organizations do have a finance and a procurement department. These two departments may be helpful in providing you funding. Finance will provide you funding for the procurement, and procurement department will tell you the strategy, policy, and the procedures of the procurement. Use pre-approved vendors before requesting a new vendor. Now, this is very interesting because do you want to work with a new contractor every time?
No. Generally, we want the same people so that they know the organization already.
Exactly. We want to deal with those with whom we have experience working earlier. So these are called pre-approved vendors. So if we have a list of pre-approved vendors, we will only ask them to bid for it. We'll not do it in open market. But in case you don't have any pre-approved vendors, then probably you have to go public, which may take more time and which may be very doubtful because we don't know what capabilities they hold. When they present their proposals, it seems like everyone is a scholar, but everyone is not. You should be able to analyze their their bids and proposals and be able to assign them the weightage or leverage for that. Then this procurement strategy also tells us that what is the purchase amount limit per signatory. For example, project manager has some authority to outsource certain projects of a certain worth. But if anything is more than that worth, then probably project sponsor will have to intercede. Right? So there might be different limits per signatory, and if it falls in your domain, you can handle it or you can escalate it to the next higher level. Use defined bidding process and templates. Naturally, they are coming from your strategic procurement strategy or policy. So all the formats of various bidding documents must already have been defined, so you don't have to work from scratch. Require request for proposals for contracts valued over a certain threshold. I would say these are large projects. If you are buying something off the shelf or some machine, then probably you don't need RFP for that. We need RFQ, which is request for quotation. Or an alternate name is invitation to bid. So you can ask them to bid for it. But that is usually when there is some equipment or machinery to be delivered. But when there is some job to be done from a contractor, so you ask them, this is our problem, you tell us, how would you go about it? Show your capability. That is RFP. Follow escalation procedures for approval of spending limits. Like I said earlier, there is a purchase amount limit per signatory. So that is exactly, if it is beyond your purchase limit, then you are not the one signing the contract. The appropriate escalation authority who has that spending limit, they would be actually signing the contract. And a very important point is pay contracts at a predefined time. Do not delay it. If they have done their job, then it should not be unpaid. Upon completion of work or at the end of the project, whichever is agreed in the contract. And whatever is agreed in the contract, you cannot delay it any further. And you should not. Now coming over to the procurement management plan, in light of the procurement policy and the strategy, you will develop as a project manager a procurement management plan which addresses all the procurements you will be doing in your project. But this is not the specific, contract or something. This is general instructions extracted from the strategy and the procurement policy. So for your project, you will create this procurement management plan, which will explicitly tell us which are the portions of work which needs to be outsourced. These are some of the procurement documents. Always the first and foremost document is statement of work. Please do not confuse it, because many people say it SOW is scope of work. It is not the scope of work. You see, we have made a decision, make or buy decision. If it is a buy decision, then you have to write a brief description of the statement of work. So if you are letting out 10 different contracts from your project, then there will be 10 different statements of work. They are for the purposes of the bidder to create their proposals. So statement of work is one document which is mandatory and the most important one. All other procurement documents shown here on the screen, they are created after the statement of work has been created. As I said, RFQ, which is request for quotation, is for bids and tenders where you need quotations and you are buying something physical, and the only thing which matters is the cost. So you will analyze the cost, and whomsoever is giving you the best cost, you award it to that person. Then invitation for bid is similar to quotation. So buyer requests expression of interest. Well, it should not be called expression of interest. Expression EOI is a separate document, and that is the last one. Expression of interest is seller issued expression of interest in work. Invitation of bid is something like RFQ, but in a more preliminary manner. Request for information can also be a procurement document if you are not sure whether it is to be a request for proposal or a request for quotation. Maybe you can invite suggestions from the various contractors. Ask them that I need to know more about this specific thing, so you tell me how can it be done. A more refined form is expression of interest, where you have absolutely no idea how to prepare your document because you don't have any expertise in that job. So you can request different sellers to kind of submit their expression of interest. You can give an outline of the task and seek their guidance, how they intend doing it. But this is not a very committed document. The committed document is RFP or RFQ are to some extent invitation for bid. But expression of interest and RFI are for seeking advice from the various contractors. Now, what is a formal procurement process? When the request for proposal has been sent out, you must announce a date. By that date, all the bids or proposals must be submitted. But between issuance of RFP and receipt of proposals, you must provide one or two opportunities for a bidder conference as if their queries could be settled and they can prepare their proposal in a more relaxed manner. They will have many questions and they will get in touch with you. So it is always good to call a bidder conference where you answer everyone in front of everyone else. Use request for proposal, bidder conferences, and formal processes to ensure all prospective vendors have a clear and common understanding of the procurement. So our statement should be clear, statement of work, as if the other party who is bidding for it, they should be well prepared and clear about the scope of procurement. Work closely with the procurement officer or department because you are just a project manager. You may not be expert in the matters of procurement. Therefore, you must always remain in touch with the procurement officer or department because they know better as far as the procurements are concerned. Once you receive the proposals, how are you going to evaluate them? These are some of the things you should see. What is the overall life cycle cost? What is this? You are trying to start an initiative, and to launch that initiative, vendor has asked for a certain amount. You pay them and they deliver that thing to you. But after they disengage, after they have handed it over to you, you find out that it is going to be the very high maintenance item, right? So there is a lot of life cycle cost, which could be much more than what the cost of the project was. So just do not ignore this. This is the important information. If the life cycle cost is very high, probably you should not go for them. Understanding of need could be there. Technical capability has to be checked. Their management approach, the contractors. Technical approach. What are the warranties are they giving? What is their financial capacity? What is their production capacity and interest in this project? What is size of their business and type? And what are their past performances? Because they might not have worked with us earlier, but they must have worked with other organizations. So references are required. Intellectual property rights and proprietary rights. That is, who will own the intellectual property of whatever is being created? Now, there is a conflict here. Sometimes the contractor, they say that we will provide you a software which we have already developed and we have sold it to many different companies. So we can't sell the software to you, but we will hold the intellectual property right. But from our point of view, we would like that whatever we are buying, it should be the property of our company. Right? So this is a thing which must be considered. You have to strike a balance. And what are the proprietary risks? These are the things must be included in source selection criteria. You will evaluate the bidders based on this criteria you have established. About the qualified vendor or pre-approved vendors, I have already talked about. These are the people we prefer to work with. We have already worked with them earlier. Contracts, we negotiate productive relationships. So contracts basically legalize the working agreement between the two parties. They give structure to working relationship. They further collaboration with partners. Consider risks associated with the contract type. Deliver benefits to the buyer. Different benefits by type can be tailored for the partnership. Anyways, generally speaking, these are the 4 steps we must go through. First of all, we must determine the need for what we are doing. You should request from the various parties if they can bid for it or they can submit the proposal. They all submit the proposal, we evaluate them, and we select one contractor for the remaining part of the project. So a contract will be signed with that party. Okay, we can take another break of 10 minutes and then I'll talk about the various types of the contracts. Okay, so here we are going to talk about the various types of contract. Actually, for predictive projects, we have 3 different types of projects, contracts. First type is called cost reimbursable. Cost reimbursable further has 3 subtypes. First of all, let me tell you what is a cost reimbursable contract. The contractor works for you. He has certain fee to be paid to him for his services, but he does not invest money in your project. What he does is he procures the items and presents you the bill for all the materials. And you have to promptly pay him. He would be responsible for getting the job done. That's what he's paid for. But all the consumables he will buy, you will have to immediately pay him, and the fee can be paid at a pre-agreed schedule. That is called all the costs which will incur on the project will have to be reimbursed immediately by you. And then when the job is done, he could be paid his fee. I hope you understand that. This is a type of contract which is usually preferred by the contractors because they don't have to carry any risk of your work. They don't make any investment into your project. They are just getting paid immediately. These type of contracts are further divided into 3 parts, 3 types. First is cost reimbursable plus fixed fee, meaning no matter how the job is done, but there is a agreement on a fixed fee which will not be reduced or which will not be increased. It is a fixed fee, and when the contract was awarded, this fixed fee was decided. We will reimburse the seller for any allowable cost which he has bought equipment for us, or things for us, or materials for us, but he would be paid the same fixed fee. Now, in this kind of a contract, what is the motivation for the contractor to work better? He would not put in his best because he knows this is the fee which will ultimately be paid to him. There is no incentive in this kind of contract, although the contractor may like it. But from your perspective, I suppose it should be cost reimbursable plus incentive fee. That means it is written in the agreement that this is the fee of the contractor, and if he does a good job, we could give him a certain incentive. And that can also be mentioned in the contract, that what that incentive will be. For example, if he could finish the project 1 month earlier than the due date, he would be awarded 10% extra fee or something like that. This is cost plus incentive. This is good because both parties are clear what they are getting into, and this convinces the other party to work harder. But another way is cost reimbursable plus award fee. Now, what is this? That is similar to incentive, but in incentive, we have signed out in the contract what will be the incentive, how much incentive we will get. If he doesn't perform well, how much money would be deducted from his fee and things like that. But as far as award is concerned, we will pay the cost, but as far as the award is concerned, that would not be disclosed. At the time of the contract, we will just say that you will be rewarded in addition to your fee if you do well. What is the award? We don't know. It is not specified in the contract. But it just says in a subjective manner that you will be rewarded. Now, the good thing is this is more in your favor because the contractor would be expecting a big award and he would be working harder and harder. And trust me, these awards are usually large awards, big amounts. So this could be even more convincing. This was the first type of contract, cost reimbursable contracts. Then we have the fixed price contract. This is a type of contract in which the contractor takes the responsibility of all the costs, all the expenditures, and for the completion of the whole work, and he charges a hefty fee for that. So he is actually making investment into your project, and he's promised to be paid well. But the problem with this contract is that we try to shift all the risk on the shoulders of the contractor, right? It was a risky job, so I cut a deal with one of the contractors and agreed that, okay, lump sum, I'll pay you this much amount if you get my job done. No cost will be reimbursed during the life of the project, or it could only be the firm fixed price, which could be paid at the end of the project or in installments. So that type of contract is firm fixed price. This is the best contract we can have because the contractor, we are shifting all the risk onto his shoulders. So we are happier than the contractor. But contractor usually doesn't really feel comfortable with this type of arrangement. If we can somehow incentivize the contractor on top of the fixed price, that if you do good job, you will be paid this much extra money. So that is more attractive to the contractor. We lure him into taking risk and in exchange for a reward or incentive. Then we have got another classification, that is firm fixed price with economic price adjustment. That is what is in the favor of the contractor. Because contractor, if it is dealing with some area which is a risky area, like a war-trodden country or something, there they are very much afraid about fixed price because fixed price may be in the local currency. So what they do is they say, okay, we are signing this contract now conditionally. And the condition is that whenever our payment is due, there will be an economic price adjustment made to it. Meaning, if the dollar parity or things have changed, then our rates will be revised according to that. So this is a safer game for firm fixed price with economic price adjustment in it. That was the second type, firm fixed price. Third type is a time and material contracts. Now, these contracts are not comparable to previous two types, but they are short time contracts for short time assignments. For example, I hire a consultant on this project for only 1 month to prepare a feasibility study. So for this 1 month, if I hire this contractor, then he will help us develop the contract or whatever for or the feasibility for 1 month, and then he will pay it off and he can go home. He can charge us on per day basis or per hour basis. So naturally, these resources are much expensive, right? But you see, this type suits us because he gets our job done in a short period of time. Similarly, in your project, if there is some requirement to fill in the spaces for missing employees temporarily, we can also go for a time and material contract with some specialists who can do our job on the project. And once that is, their contract time is completed, they can go back home. This is also called time and means contract. It combines the aspects of both cost reimbursable and fixed price, used when a precise scope or statement of work is available. Used often for augmenting staff temporarily. On you think you may have a shortage of data entry operators and you want to fill in the gap for 2 such staff members. So this is a temporary assignment. We are hiring someone for 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months, and then they will be let off. Okay, these were the contract types applicable to a predictive project. Now let us talk about agile project. Agile projects may have very different kind of contracts because you can't have a fixed price kind of a thing. How can we do that? How can we deal a contract with continuously changing requirements? That is a big challenge. So these are some ideas. Many people have structured many types of agile contracts, and let me briefly explain each one of them to you. There is one multi-tiered structure. We just create a master service agreement and sign it. It only captures some fixed items, but not all the details. For example, liabilities, warranties, arbitration, such classic terms are there in the service agreement, master service agreement, because the scope of the work is not well defined. So we list a variable list of items in a schedule of service or schedule of work, where they will be providing us rates for each item, right? So whenever we ask them to do that job, we will have to pay them accordingly. But this is not something which is predefined in the contract that this is the total amount of work they do. So we can keep getting the work done from them until we are having money. So this contract is not about some kind of specification. Although we do develop a SOW to itemize all the dynamic items, and especially scope, schedule, and budget. But you see, because we are paying for it, we can increase the schedule anytime and the contractor will have to live with it. Because they have given us the rate, maybe per unit rate or something like that, and we can order any amount anytime. So this will suit our agile contract where the requirements are not clear. Another method is emphasize value delivered. Now this is interesting. We are not, the contractor is not going to charge us for what he has done, but he will be paid for what value he has delivered. If he delivers value, maybe we have agreement that 10% of the value delivered you will be paid to you, right? So rather than focusing on a product and paying him for the product, we say that you have delivered this much value to us, so we will release this much payment to you as part of the emphasized value delivered contract. This is again an agile type because the scope is not really very well defined here. So whenever and howsoever we deliver value, we will be paid for that. Then we have fixed price increments. Like we say that one iteration of ours will cost you $5,000. So as far as requirements are concerned, we don't mind. You can keep changing the requirement, and in a fixed price increment, we will keep charging you for one iteration at a time. Meaning, after every iteration, they have to pay us $5,000. Right? So that way, the scope of the work can be increased or decreased. We don't mind because we have a fixed price defined and we will be paid according to that. Not to exceed time and material. Now, this is again interesting. We limit the budget to fixed amount. When we start the project, we say we have only this much money, right? And we will not spend any more money on it, right? But the requirements will change. If the requirements change, the money has to be increased? No. So what we are doing here, we are saying we are allowing the customer to add ideas by removing existing ones. Meaning, whenever customer comes to us that this requirement may please be added, we will not say no to it. But we will just say that, okay, if I add this portion into the contract, the price equivalent to that, you have to withdraw some requirements which are almost equivalent to the new requirement. For example, this new requirement is for $20,000, right? So we say that, okay, because you are adding a budget of 20,000, you have to subtract equivalent work of 10,000 as if we can still be in the same limited budget and we can deliver and you can be happy. So we limit the budget to a fixed amount. Then there is another method which is called graduated time and material. That means connect quality and timely delivery of work, just like we did in value delivered. So you connect quality and time delivery of work to financial reward. A reward for early and reduce for late delivery. So if you deliver early, you will be rewarded. And if you are late, then there will be some fine due to the late delivery. Early cancellation option is very close to not to exceed time and material kind of a thing. In this, we say, if you add any requirements, we will entertain that. But as soon as it meets your level of satisfaction, you will call the project off and we will be paid the full fee we agreed for the contract. Why? Because requirements are changing and new requirements are maybe higher on the order, they are higher priority items. And as I keep delivering highest grossing elements, that means the value will be delivered to the customer early. And when they are satisfied, then we can ask for the project to be closed. Maybe there are still items remaining, but we will not bother about it. We will say, if you are satisfied with our more than 80% of results, then probably this project should be closed down early. Early cancellation option. Enable flexible delivery of scope using definition of done. For example, if partial scope delivery satisfies the customer, contract may be cancelled for a fee. Customer can request anytime that I have already got the 80% of the benefit and we don't want you to work anymore. So if partial scope delivery satisfies the customer, they may cancel the project anytime. Dynamic scope options gives option to vary scope and fund innovation at specific points while limiting supplier risk. Vary scope at specific points to adjust features and innovate. Last but not the least is the team augmentation. That is just like, we have already talked about that we have kind of, we are charging for the time of the team, $5,000 per iteration. So in team augmentation, we get in touch with the customer, and customer requires our team to work in their premises, right? So we say, okay, no problem. Just like we had kind of a fixed price for this kind of thing. So embed supplier services directly into the customer organization, find team instead of scope. So basically what we are doing is we are kind of giving our agile team on loan or on, kind of we are paid for that time, right? So embed supplier services directly into the customer organization, fund them instead of scope. So when you sign a sign a contract, what should be the major headings in each contract? Description of work, which is like the statement of work, delivery dates and schedule information, which we have agreed, identification of authority where appropriate, because you should be politically aware and you should know to whom should I talk. Responsibilities of both parties, management of technical and business aspects, price and payment terms, provisions for termination, applicable guarantees or warranties, intellectual property, security, confidentiality, data privacy, etc. So all of these things must be part of the contract. Question: which two are components of a resource calendar? Yes, please.
A and C.
C.
A and C. Good. This is simple. What does R stand in Rasi chart?
D. Responsible.
Good.
D.
Okay. An architecture firm has spent a great deal of time and effort creating the design and blueprints for the building. They had to purchase materials and hire consultants and have been working on this project for 6 months. They have submitted all the invoices for the money they have spent on the work, as well as an advice for the fee of 90,000. So what type of a contract is this?
Cost reimbursable.
Yeah, letter D.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Okay, we are done with this portion, and the next lesson is budget. So if you like, we can start it tomorrow, or I can start it now and then continue tomorrow. What is your opinion?
I think we can start tomorrow.
You can, yeah, a fresh start
Okay,
tomorrow. A lot of
fine with
information
me.
already.
So we can close down today's session early, and we
Yep.
can meet tomorrow the same time, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, then thank you very much and take care. See you tomorrow.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Suhail.
Suhail.
Thank you. Take
Bye.
care. Bye bye.
Bye.